Convicted perjurer Michael Cohen testified against Trump in Big Tishy James's trial that is taking place in Judge Engoron's courtroom. And we know that convicted perjurer Michael Cohen's not a very reliable guy because we've talked about, well, his plea deal where he actually was convicted for perjury. But he was the subject of today's trial. He testified for quite a bit. We're going to see what he had to say about it. Of course, he will be subject to cross-examination from Trump's defense, and they're going to make a field day of this one because he is a liar, in my opinion. But this is what the conviction or the plea deal looked like. Before we see what was happening in the courtroom, Trump had a short couple statements, and then we'll jump into the trial activities. But as a reminder, we know that Michael Cohen, in fact, pled guilty. And here is what it looked like. This was the document signed by him in the case involving United States versus Michael Cohen from the special counsel's office, drafted 2018 in November. All the way down here at the bottom of this agreement, you see, oh, Michael Cohen's name right there. Says here, I read every page of this agreement. I've discussed it. I fully understand this agreement. I entered voluntarily of my own will. I'm pleading guilty because I am in fact guilty of the offense identified in the agreement. What offense is that? Do you wonder? Well, pretty simple. Right here it is. Michael Cohen saying that you have agreed to plead guilty to a criminal information charging your client with making false statements to the United States Congress, lying to Congress in violation of 18 U.S. Code Section 1001. So Michael Cohen, a convicted perjurer who entered a plea deal agreeing that he is actually a perjurer. And this is actually a real plea deal, okay, with an actual conviction. Unlike Fannie's cases, which are not actual convictions at all, not even actual guilty plea judgments, as we'll get to. But a convicted perjurer showed up in court today. A lot of people on the left love this guy for some reason. I don't know what it is about him. Maybe it's the accent or something, but he showed up in court. People are thrilled. I think because they know that he'll lie to get rid of somebody that they don't like all that much.
Michael, come on, you're lying.
We're here, Michael.
All right, so he's in court. You can see the cameras not really making their way inside. We got a couple clips from Trump before we see what took place in trial today. Trump came in after the fact and they asked him, hey, Cohen's gonna be here. He's testifying today. Tishy's in the courtroom, sitting in the back of the courtroom, not actually doing anything on the attorney's table. But here's Trump coming in and he gets asked about Cohen.
How do you feel about Jenna Ellis taking a plea deal?
How do you feel to see Michael Cohen here?
Well, he hadn't seen him in 10 years. And you know his record. His record is a horrible one. All you have to do is ask the Southern District of New York. He's got a horrible record. But they're just starting, but you'll see how it ends up.
What about his testimony?
It's not going to end up very good.
What about his testimony?
We're not worried at all about his testimony.
Not worried at all about his testimony. You know him. He's a liar. He's a perjurer. Just ask the Southern District of New York, which I think is maybe where that plea deal came from. But Trump was also taking a break, and this is what it sounded like when he was talking about the judge. And there was also a little bit of a COVID issue, because in New York, they're still, I don't know what they're doing there, but I don't think really many people know what they're doing there. But there was a COVID issue. Trump said, well, actually, the trial was delayed yesterday. They were supposed to be in court yesterday, but it got bumped because of some COVID thing. And apparently it's all cured now or whatever. So they're back in business. And here's what Trump said.
Concern of COVID in the courtroom?
We'll be out later. No, they should not have done that. What they did with COVID in the courtroom was a disgrace, and they should apologize. They should not have done it. And except for the bias of the judge, he should have held it off a little bit. But we're winning this case, other than the fact I don't have a jury. And I want a jury. We're entitled to a jury. Thank you.
All right, so a couple short statements from the president, and he is in court. And so let's take a look at who is doing the reporting there from inside the courtroom. This is Adam Klasfeld. He's reporting over now for The Messenger, and I encourage you to give him a follow. He does good legal reporting, and he's at Klasfeld Reports on Twitter. And so he's in the courtroom. People are filling in. We have New York State Attorney General Tishy James. She enters the courtroom, and she sits in her usual spot right in the front row in the back of the courtroom, and she lets all the other attorneys do all that actual work. But Klasfeld is in there. Now Trump's lawyer, Christopher Keese, comes in. Apparently he's talking with Tish. He's like, yeah, what up, Tish? So Trump enters next, walks slowly to the defense table, flanked by his attorneys, Chris Keese and Alina Abba. I wonder if she's wearing a turtleneck today. All rise. Oh, crap. All right, judge is here. All right, please be seated. All right, proceedings are going to begin soon. Photographers are in there. Before the trial begins, Trump's defense comes in. Your Honor, before we begin, can I please address the court? Oh, gosh. What, Chris? Yes, fiasco. Your Honor, Tish is being irresponsible in convening a trial today after Monday was adjourned because of a COVID scare. I can't believe we're here today. Chris Keese says it was members of her office that tested positive. Oh no. Tish's office. Man, I wonder what their jab policy is there. That's weird. I wonder what their policy was on that one. Somebody got COVID. Maybe they didn't put their mask on. So they have an infection and it's just spreading around their disgusting office. And they have to adjourn a trial on Monday. And so they're like, well, we got to come back on Tuesday. And Trump's people are like, gross. We're healthy, man. We don't want to be around these little disgusting people. So Keith said, it's very strange here, Your Honor. Here we are trying to be responsible and abide by COVID protocols. Okay, we should at least be out of here for 2 weeks. What is the CDC say? Go check the protocols. And this is very performative from the defense, which I love, by the way. Like, absolutely. If you want more time, like, you got to make a mountain out of every single molehill. So absolutely, I'd be throwing my fists up. I can't believe this, Your Honor. I got a family. I got kids at home, man. It means I have to go find some kids, or have them quickly. But you get the point. It says it seems that nothing else matters except for pursuing President Trump. We're in here, we're all going to die thanks to Tish. So then Tish's lawyer, okay, not even Tish herself, she says, I take exception to you calling us dirty over here. And how dare you claim that we were irresponsible? We wear our masks. Do you? So this lawyer's like, we're also following the CDC guidelines. Well, I don't know what to tell you about that. How come you caught COVID then? I don't know. The judge says, well, masks are available. Okay, so he tells Trump's people, we're going to let these sick people infect you from across the aisle in this courtroom. He says, Chris and Trump, why don't you just put your masks on? Okay, masks are available. I'm going to proceed. I'm like, oh, great. We're all going to die now. Hopefully you're aware of that, everybody in the courtroom. The government's going to kill you just to prosecute Trump. I'm not making any medical claims here. Okay, I'm being facetious. This is satire. Gosh. And says none of the defense attorneys is wearing a mask. The one from the AG's office is. Well, I wonder who that is. All right, so you get the picture. Here, it's just hilarious. So none of the attorneys took the judge up on the offer. Well, why would they? The hell's the point? This is not medical advice, but why would they put a mask on? The hell's the point? All right, so neither did Trump. Okay, obviously. Nobody masks up, but they have a fight over the mask. So all right, yeah, okay, so COVID's over. All right, up now, Bill Kelly. So we don't have Michael Cohen up yet, but he's going to jump on soon. So, Your Honor, the government now calls Bill Kelly. And, all the, COVID-exposed government is now going to be here testifying. So they call Bill Kelly. Bill Kelly comes up. Bill Kelly, they say, can you tell us about this document? He's reviewing it. And oh, yeah, I remember that. It's from May 18th, 2021. Well, what is it? He says it's a letter to Alan Garten. What were you doing in the letter? He says, I was resigning. Resigning? What does it say? I was resigning from all engagements with the Trump organization and all the related entities. So the witness now reviews the letter. Oh, you resigned? Oh my gosh, why? Why did you resign? He said, well, I resigned because Trump's statements of financial condition from 2011 through 2020, he said, should no longer be relied upon. We write to advise, this guy's writing via email, to the Trump organization. Witness now reviews this letter. It's a letter to Alan Garten. I don't know who it's from. Dear Alan, we write to advise that the statements of Trump for the years of this time should no longer be relied on and should inform the recipients of those they should not be relied on. We've come to the conclusion in part based on filings made by the Attorney General. Okay. Now, while we have not concluded that the various financial statements made as a whole contain discrepancies based on the totality, we believe our advice is no longer good. So here's the full letter, and this was signed by the witness. So this is curious. So Faherty, the affirmation. So this is a letter, Dear Alan, to Alan from the Trump organization, signed by William J. Kelly, who is on the stand. And he says the due date to file those returns. Okay, so you can't trust the numbers anymore. And what this reads like to me is that he's making this known because Tish filed the suit. Is that wrong? We've reached the point. Here's what he says. While we have not concluded that the various financial statements contain discrepancies as a whole, which to me reads like the documents are great, but we, based upon filings made by Tish and our own investigation and external sources, we've come to the conclusion that you can't rely upon those. So here's my point. If you took Tish out of here, if Tish wasn't breathing down Will Kelly's neck to say Trump is in disarray, would he have submitted this at all? He says, we have not concluded about that these statements have discrepancies, but Tish, based on the totality of them, is saying that they are. All right. So he's on the stand and he says, says, yeah, that's it. I guess he's brought in to introduce that statement. Okay, which doesn't seem that bad at all to me. Okay, so cross-examination begins. His co-counsel shows up. Trump's lawyer, his name is Jesus. Shout out to Jesus Suarez. So his counsel returns to the COVID issue again. He says, Your Honor, can we have another microphone here that's not been breathed on by these disgusting government bureaucrats, please? Get them out of here. Put a face shield up. Hey, bailiff, can you go get some of your plastic shields out of the closet that you had and just wrap them around the government and Tish's head, please? It's for COVID, man. It's for safety. So they ask for another microphone or a cover to avoid contamination. Ugh, gross. But one isn't available. Oh, I don't know why they don't have those things. Again, none of them is wearing a mask. Of course not. So Suarez is underway. Cross-examination starts. He says, all right, Mr. Kelly, now you were asked by the New York Attorney General to testify in this case at the end of the last summer. Is that right? I don't know when it was. I think it was several months ago. When were you subpoenaed? I don't know. Have you seen a subpoena? I think I have. Okay. So you have no specific memory of getting a subpoena at all? No. Okay. Well, I think that you were deposed. You had a deposition. You remember that? Yeah. Remember where that happened? Yeah. I think that was Trump Tower. And so when you were there, you agree that you discussed their testimony, right? We talked about your testimony, right? Yeah. And you practiced for your direct examination today, didn't you? Objection from Tish in her plastic box. Says, objection. Kelly previously disputed the characterization of it as practicing. Don't call it, okay, say it again. So you also told me that you had no concern with the work Donald Bender did for Trump, right? You said that his work was fine, right? Correct. And so he's now trying to undermine that guy's credibility. He says at some point you disagreed with Bender, didn't you? Well, I may not have read every line, he says, but I did look at it. Bender said at the time that I may not have read every line, but I did look at it. He says, does that testimony concern you at all? He says, no. So he says, I want you to review this statement of financial condition from 2014. I want to show you this document. See it? Yeah. Now I want to draw your attention to a passage here on the value of the Trump brand. Do you see that? Yeah. Can you read that for us? He says, sure. He says, it says here at the end, the goodwill attached to the Trump name has significant value that has not been reflected in the preparation of this financial statement. Now, the goodwill attached to the Trump name has significant value that has not been reflected in the preparation of this statement. That's on the document. Now, Klasfeld tells us that the judge found this language was fraudulent because Trump org was boosting assets from brand value, is what I think that's Klasfeld inserting. In other words, I don't think that that happened right now in sequence. So he says, Mazar's witnesses have emphasized that they provide compilations, not appraisals, and the distinction being that they are not responsible for the underlying data. So, well, I don't know what they said, but we're not responsible for that. So then he seeks to undermine that argument. He says, well, how about this? In 2017, the Trump organization was forced to change the size of the triplex, Trump's New York's triplex. Forbes publicly confirmed apparently he lied about the penthouse. Now, Mazars didn't repudiate the financial statements until years later. So he alludes to that in his questioning. So they break for the morning. Now, maybe not yet, but he says, Kelly testified that Mazars, this other organization, cut ties with the Trump organization because they doubted the credibility of Alan Weisselberg, who would also later be convicted. Trump sitting there, he's watching the testimony, leaning back in his chair, facing the witness stand, head slightly tilted back, occasionally turning his head towards his lawyer. Now we get a morning recess and they take a break. Klasfeld's reporting, coming back soon. Trump's back in the courtroom. Eric Trump's there, his son, sitting in the front row opposite Tish. Cross-examination continues. Judge yells at Trump's defense, hey, stop repeating your questions. And Trump's lawyer jumps up and says, hey, Judge, how are you criticizing our team? This never happens during their examination, okay? They repeat questions over and over. You're not scolding them. The judge is sitting there chuckling. We just disagree on what the reason is. He knows it's his courtroom. Who cares? So Suarez ends his questioning by claiming that Bender buckled to harassment from Tish. He says it was harassment. He lost his biggest client. He went to the White House and cried, and he cuts him off. Is this a speech or a question? Trump's defense. He alludes to Kelly's letter. He says, we have not concluded that the various financial statements as a whole contain discrepancies, right? The exact line that we just parsed out. And he lauds the witness for having the fortitude to resist the harassment. So Kelly's done. Now, entering the courtroom, today's big witness, Michael Cohen, convicted perjurer. Weakling, pathetic, no eye contact with Trump. Walks in right by him. He's like this, Michael Cohen. Don't look at Trump. Walks right by him. pathetic. You walk in and you make eye contact directly, and you look at somebody closely, and you say, watch this, buddy. That's how you do it. That's not what he did. So he walks on by like a little perjurer and walks right to the stand, ready to lie. In my opinion, we'll see. He says Cohen begins with his educational background and his prior convictions. So why is Tish bringing on a perjurer to testify? Well, there's no jury here, so the judge is just going to, believe whatever he wants. So including Trump-related campaign violations and lying to Congress about Trump's business interests, right? The guy's a liar. You see how they always include Trump in there? It's always Trump. So far, Cohen delved into the statute rather than the background details for whatever reason. They say, hey, Michael, this is Tishy prosecutor up there. Obviously not Tish, because she doesn't do anything in this case other than just sit there and observe like an intern. Says, ask whether he made a public comment on this. Hey, Michael, this is the Trump case. Have you ever talked about this case in public? He says, yeah, on more than one occasion. And you've been convicted of other crimes. You want to clarify anything about that? He says, yeah, I acknowledge my complicity in the Stormy Daniels matter, though he said he wasn't implicated in the hush money payments. He says, I told lies about Trump Tower and Moscow at the direction of, in concert with, and for the benefit of Mr. Trump. Right? He's probably not looking at Trump either because he's a weakling. He said, Christopher Keese moves to strike. He says, that's not responsive, Your Honor. He says, I don't know if that's from a book that he's writing or what, says Trump's lawyer. Judge says, oh, quiet down, Chris. Overruled. He says, well, the question could have been shortened, but it was responsive. So he's kind of giving a nudge over to Cohen. Hey, just answer. Okay, don't make your little stupid speeches. So then Cohen, they ask him about, well, tell me how you came about your initial business connections to Donald Trump, Michael, prosecutor says. And I keep saying prosecutor because that's essentially what this is. Okay, it's a civil prosecution, even though it's not a criminal case. It's a civil case, but these are Tish's Attorney General's office. He says, well, how did you come across Trump? He says, I was asked to handle a few matters for Mr. Trump, which also resolved successfully. And he asked me if I would leave that sleepy old firm and join him. Now, who did you report to at the Trump organization, Michael? He says, Donald Trump. Anyone else? No. Now, Colleen Faherty hammers the point home with similar questions, same answers. You reported to Trump? Yeah. Anybody else? No. How often? Regularly. And anybody else there? No. And got it, enough. Cohen, he says, my position was outside the legal department. He says, when I started, Jason Greenblatt was the general counsel alongside with George Ross. And they say, thanks for that. Now I want to ask about Trump Jr. They say, Cohen is testifying about Trump's kids, Eric and Donald Jr. He describes Eric as being involved in development and acquisition of real estate. He says, he was pretty concentrated on golf as well. Again, different opportunities that would come into the company. Don and Eric and Ivanka, they would split different opportunities. And they said, I was involved in a potential acquisition of the Buffalo Bills, as well as the Miami Doral property. And they say, I want to show you some documents from June 2011. He says, all right. Does this appear to be a document that you may have worked on during your employment at the Trump organization? Cohen, not that bright, says, I don't recall. Well, they turn to another page, and it's listing Trump's assets. They say, well, turn that page over. Hopefully you remember this one. Tell me about this. And so we have this statement here. Cohen says, quote, this is a quote from Klasfeld, I was tasked by Mr. Trump to increase the total assets based upon a number that Trump arbitrarily elected. And just by the way, this is a convicted perjurer liar who is saying this here, so whatever. And my responsibility, along with Alan Weisselberg predominantly, was to reverse engineer the various asset classes, increase those assets to achieve the number that Mr. Trump asked us. What number did Trump ask you to do? I don't know. He says, whatever Mr. Trump told us to do. And so, okay, that's a liar who's making that statement. So take it for what it's worth. Now the judge is going to say, wow, that's incredible. That's amazing, Michael. Thank you for your honesty here today. But now we're back in session. They took looks like a lunch break. They say, let's keep going there, Michael. Now tell me about your work with Alan Weisselberg. He says, well, it's pretty easy. We would look at the assets. We would increase its values in order to achieve the number. So me and another guy, Alan, would collude to increase our asset value. They say, did Trump ever say anything to you? And he said, oh yeah, all the time. What did he say? Give me an example. Donald Trump told me, he said something like this, I'm not worth 4.5 billion. I'm really worth more like 6 billion. Now Cohen has shown some documents. You see here a bunch of math adding up, $4.597 billion. That is billion. Okay, so 4.597 billion. Now Cohen testifies that he understood that Trump said it's more than that. And here, Cohen, he says that he understood that Eric, Don Jr., and Ivanka were involved in valuing properties. So the judge asks the question, did you see the children involved? And Cohen says, no, I didn't. I did not personally observe that. So what types of things did Donald Trump inflate, liar Cohen? He says, quote, possibly Trump Tower, Trump Park Avenue, Trump World Tower, 100 Central Park South, mansions at the Seven Springs, Miss Universe pageants, and other their assets, right? They're all listed here. So then the testimony turns over to the Gang of Four. And this is apparently a quartet called Matthew Allen Weisselberg, Ron Lieberman, and him. They say that they all did stuff together. They talk about the Buffalo Bills. They ask a question about the Buffalo Bills. Cohen says, we had a meeting in Trump's office with members of the DB's team to secure a loan that would be predicated off of his assets to get the bills. Now they go through another email. It's a message from Ivanka to somebody else. Keese is objecting. He's standing up. Your Honor, what is this drive-by reference to the Buffalo Bills in the lawsuit? You can't just bring that in. And Engoron actually goes over and says, we don't need to get into all this. I believe we can all agree that Trump never owned the Buffalo Bills. Tish's team says, yeah. So the judge just admits it in. Now, no direct eye contact between Trump or Cohen, since they shared a physical location for the first time in half a decade. But now we're back. Cohen's examining a piece of evidence related to the Buffalo Bills, and the letter says that I have a net worth in excess of $8 billion. Financial statements to be provided upon request, comprised of substantial cash balances, highly liquid assets, and very little debt. So, okay, he sends a letter, just wild. He says, I want to purchase in this letter the Buffalo Bills for $1 billion. I'm worth 8. Tish says at the time, Trump was only worth 2.3. He lied in a bid that never ended up happening, and that's the big reveal? He made a letter to a Buffalo Bills bid and never got accepted, never went anywhere? Okay. So they say no further questions. You're like, wow, that's your big reveal. Good job, guys. So then we get back out now. It's cross-examination time, and guess who's up? It's Alina Abba in the house. And man, this is probably going to be the best cross-examination you've ever heard, ever. So just be forewarned, because she's a great attorney. Alina Abba comes up to the stand. Mic's not working, tripping out in the courtroom, all over the place. Somebody tells her, you should just speak up. Alina, sharp as a tack, says, that's the first time someone told me to speak louder. Hey-yo. Alina walks up to the podium. She's not afraid of eye contact. She looks Cohen dead-eye. Hello, Mr. Cohen, Miss Abba. What would you like me to call you today, Mr. Cohen? He says, I think Mr. Cohen for today would be good. Mr. Cohen, do you have any health issues at this moment that would prevent you from answering fully and honestly? Cohen objects, asked and answered. He's objecting to her. And Alina says, that's not your job here. That's their job. The Attorney General does the objecting here today, Michael. Mr. Cohen, thanks. He says, no, I'm not. Under the influence. Nothing will prevent me. She gets control of the witness. Beautiful. Now, Mr. Cohen, you understand what under oath means, right, Mr. Cohen? Yes. Well, that's good, because you took a guilty plea under oath. I want to show you this one from 2018, where you took guilty pleas for tax evasion. You remember that? He looks at her, yeah. And these charges were not related to Donald Trump, were they? No. Now, he's objecting, and Adam says he's not allowed to do that. He's the witness. And so this is turning into just madness, okay? He's objecting. He's throwing a big fit. You've heard Michael Cohen. He just talks strangely like he's got marbles in his mouth. And he's just throwing a fit on there. And Christopher Keese now from Trump's defense jumps up. Your Honor, this witness is completely out of control. Why is he objecting to Alina Abba's most perfect and beautiful questions? So something happens. They get it under control. Alaba gets back on the podium. Now, you're not on a mea culpa, okay? You're not on mea culpa, Mr. Cohen. You're not on your podcast, okay? You're not on CNN, says Alina. Now, after a question's asked about whether he still has his law license, you don't even have your law license, do you there, Michael? Cohen also says, asked and answered. And that's the day. Trial ends for the day after it's noted that it's not his objection to make. Your Honor, he's a witness. He's not a government prosecutor. Testy cross-examination will resume back on Wednesday. And my goodness, my friends, I've not heard cross-examination quite so incredible. Amazing job, Alina. Really amazing. You're awesome. So that was a great exchange there. Michael Cohen in court testifying about Donald Trump. And so he's a convicted perjurer, obviously a liar. And they brought him in here to talk about the Buffalo Bills and a Buffalo Bills letter that never went anywhere. So incredible job there, Tish. Now, we will continue to cover this, my friends. Thank you for subscribing and hitting the like button. Thank you for going to robertgovea.com to sign up for our daily newsletter so that you get all of these stories, reports delivered to your inbox. And we'll look forward to seeing you on the next one.